He's being taken care of. He's home.
Welcome to the 15th season of Heart to Heart with Anna. I am Anna Jaworski and the host of your program. Today's show is in memory of David Franco, beloved son, father, brother, and friend. And we have a panel of people who loved David Franco and are in our studio audience today. David Franco was born on December 19, 1966. In the winter of 2014, David Franco contacted me after he heard Heart to Heart with Anna, a new podcast that I had just started the year prior. David and I were Facebook friends, and he exclaimed one day, "I had no idea we were neighbors." That's a Texan frame of mind for you. We lived over an hour away from each other, but in Texas, that means you're neighbors. Within a very short period of time, we were meeting in Austin at La Madeleine and having our photo made with his lovely daughter, Sarah. Little did I know how meeting David would change my life. David became much more than a guest on my program. With his knowledge of music and sound, he became a sound engineer for my program. But more than that, he became a host of the eponymous podcast, Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. Even though the podcast was short-lived, working on that podcast boosted our working relationship to a new level. It got to where David and I were talking multiple times a day, and he was also helping to produce Heart to Heart with Anna. Today in this program, we will take some time to share stories about David, who sadly passed away on March 12th, 2020. Welcome to Heart with Anna, dear family and friends of David Franco. I'm going to start today's episode by posing a question, and then I'll invite a select small group of people to share their answer for that topic with all of us. Please share a favorite memory of David with us.
I'll take that.
Okay, here is Philip, and he is David's younger brother. Philip, please share a memory of David with us.
Sure. I guess it was back in 1998 or 9, I forget. I took the opportunity to fly out to Texas, and Dave and I drove out to the Guadalupe Mountains in New Mexico. And one day we hiked Carlsbad Caverns and went down into the caves and all that stuff, and that was fun. And then the next day we hiked to the top of Mount Guadalupe, which is adjacent to the caverns. It's still part of that sort of mountain range. And it was a great adventure driving out there and killing some armadillo on the way. And then, and then the hiking in Carlsbad Caverns and that kind of stuff. But the real memory that I have is hiking to the top of Mount Guadalupe and taking our time to get up there, because it was a pretty arduous trek to get up there. And Dave was not in failing health, but he wasn't in great condition. And we were 6,500 feet above sea level, so the air was pretty thin. And we get to the top, and it was beautiful, and you can see the entire Permian Basin in front of you looking east toward Texas. And it was really, really beautiful. And we decided to take some time and drink some water and kind of soak it all in. And we realized that we were out of water.
Oh, no.
6,500 feet up in altitude, we realized that we didn't bring enough water with us. And so we had to trek all the way down in desert conditions, really.
Wow.
At altitude without any water. And Dave was a trooper. He was the one kind of talking us through, like, we're going to get to the bottom. We're going to be fine. We're going to fill up when we get there and all the stuff. It was a really great adventure. It's a memory that I will keep with me forever. And it's something that I will never forget. I tell my kids about that adventure and how even though you go into a situation kind of unprepared, you can always look to someone to help you out, to kind of talk you through and get you through the rough time.
And that was the thing that I loved about David. Most people would never believe that he had a serious heart defect. He was always out hiking and doing activities. He was amazing to me. I think that's what was so hard about the last couple of years of his life, was that he really wasn't able to do those things that he loved doing.
He really demonstrated not having any limiting beliefs. He didn't believe that he couldn't do something until he demonstrated that he couldn't. Right. But at the same time, he didn't limit himself to sedentary life. That just wasn't part of his makeup.
No, it really, really wasn't. That sounds like a lovely memory for you to share. And I know David was really good since I've known him. And like I said, it's only been the last 6 years that I was fortunate enough to have him in my life. But he was really good about taking pictures and posting them on Facebook and sharing his treks with everybody. And I loved it when he did that. Hopefully you have some great pictures. So next, Vinny said he would like to share a favorite memory. And Vinny is the older brother to David. Vinny?
I'll keep it short. I've got just a couple of them, but one was in a similar vein of doing strenuous things. We used to do road trips all the time. Some of the fondest memories I have were, one of them was the trip to Dallas to the Mogadishu Mile, which is a 5K. It's up around the Irving area where the horses are, that area, Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a course let out that has the tombstones of people there. There's a lot of good things about it. It's a reverent thing. It's a strenuous thing, but he jumped right into it. We drove up one afternoon and stayed at a hotel and then got up early the next morning and went to the course, and we walked around it first one time. I think that was my problem, because once I got to the run part of it, I went about halfway and one of my knees gave out, but Dave finished everything and I was waiting for him at the finish line. His face was all red, but he finished. And there's just nothing if he set his mind to do, that he wouldn't do or couldn't do.
Yeah.
But a couple other things. Any Army football game, and we went to a bunch of them. And that's always a road trip for us because they never played in Austin.
Right.
Traveling to the beach, and running on the beach or biking on the beach or playing Frisbee on the beach.
Yeah.
It was always something we were doing.
Yeah.
And anytime hunting or fishing, he was always active, always. That's something I'll always miss because he was my friend in addition to being my brother.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I know all of you so well because I talked to David every day. And when he would get off the phone, he would kind of fill me in on what was going on. And so I kind of felt like I knew all of you. And it's funny how, as busy as David was, he was able to do that. He was able to keep in touch with everybody and keep everybody's stories straight and who was doing what where. And I found that amazing with him. But I didn't know he was a hunter. I knew he loved the beach. He talked to me a lot about going to Corpus Christi. And I knew he loved the beach, but I didn't know he was a hunter or a fisherman.
Yes, he was. And usually an overnight or 2 nights overnight. And we used to do it with the Knights of Columbus and with a couple of my buddies where I worked in Austin, had camps. There's another funny story I'll tell you later on. But he was an active guy. He really was. And a lot of times he was in better shape than I was, honestly.
Texas Heart Institute were offering us a mechanical heart. And he said, "No, Dad, I've had enough. Give it to someone who's worthy."
My father promised me a golden dress to twirl in. He held my hand and asked me where I wanted to go.
Whatever strife or conflict that we experienced in our long career together was always healed by humor.
Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us every Thursday at noon Eastern as we talk with people from around the world who have experienced those most difficult moments.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
You are listening to Heart with Anna. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. That's anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. Now, back to Heart with Anna.
Before the break, we had a few of David Franco's family share some favorite memories with us. David was born with cc-TGA, or congenitally corrected transposition of the great arteries, and his complex congenital heart defect didn't really affect his quality of life until he entered his 40s. For the next topic, I'd like for everyone to talk about how David's heart defect affected their relationship with David. Would you like to talk about how David's heart defect affected your relationship with your son? Because I know you have, obviously, multiple children who are here talking to us today. And we also had Andrew. David talked often about Andrew, who passed away before he did. And I know that having a child with a heart defect definitely affects your relationship with your child.
It taught me a great deal about my own feelings and how I had to get him through what he had to put up with as a baby. And you couldn't just cry over it. You couldn't even question God's doing such a thing to your precious baby. I had to be strong for David. And it made me understand a great deal about my sister, who was 10 years older than I. And she was born with a CHD, which they didn't even know about because she was born in 1923. So she suffered her whole life.
Wow.
And nobody knew pretty much what was wrong with her. But all of a sudden I was getting insights and saying, aha, that was it. David had a lot of hospital stays, but by that time, he knew a lot about himself. And when we got back to the Northeast, and he'd have to go into Montefiore Hospital, of course, by that time he had a pacemaker. And the doctor he saw there for the pacemaker was Dr. Seymour Furman. Nice guy. He used to let me come in the surgery as he was changing David's pacemakers and all that. I didn't assist, but I was there watching the whole thing, and the doctor talking to me the whole time.
Wow.
We met nurses there that when David would have to have checkups, everybody welcomed him and said, oh, he's back. He got to know everybody, and as they say, he got to know himself. He struggled psychologically with a lot of things. Mainly, I think, the pacemaker young, because if you recall, there was a series on television, The Bionic Man, So I think David thought he was going to be that. But he managed. He fought the diets that they put him on with no salt and this and that. He rebelled. But he got through. He went to school. He did well. He was very bright. I think, though, he was self-deprecating, and especially after he had that stroke.
Yeah.
92. And he did come back from it physically. He did have some difficulties, but he always worried about his brain.
Yeah.
And even toward the end, I think that was part of the reason he did not want the heart transplant. He was a candidate, but he felt he had too many defects. It wouldn't be a great success. It would be an enormous financial burden. And I think that when David came to live with me the few months before he died, he went to Yale, New Haven, to a Dr. Elder, who was a CHD doctor there. He had met him before. So after David died, I called up Dr. Elder. I wanted to let him know. And Dr. Elder said to me, David knew his body. He knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. But he said he was very clear that he wanted to live out his life the way he wanted to, not connected to tubes or anything else. And he knew that there was a big chance that the transplant wouldn't work. But he was content to do what he wanted to do. So I'm very blessed that I had him for those few months and had his crazy dog, Douglas, who is now named Dingo. And off he'd go to the dog park every morning with Douglas. Then he'd come back and he and Douglas would sleep most of the day. I didn't realize he was failing as quickly as he did.
Are you amazed that he made it for 5 decades?
Oh, yes, they told us he wouldn't live past 4. And I was amazed and so proud of him when he would do those warrior races and raise funds for the Heart Association in Austin. And he was very active in that. He did have some very happy moments, and I think he did what he wanted to do. And I think he did it the way he wanted to do it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mom. We're going to talk to David's older sister about how his heart defect affected his relationship with his sister, Roseanne.
I'll never forget, David was 6 months old, and I think he'd just come out of the hospital. It had been a prolonged hospitalization, and he was an infant. I can remember my dad and I watching football on the living room floor, and there he was on the blanket, as normal as any 6-month-old. My dad told me that David was not going to live to see the age of 5. Well, that was the first time I ran away from home.
Oh, wow.
I just kind of took off out of the house and just went running up the street crying. We took it for granted that medical science knew everything in the moment, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
And life in those years was difficult. David was hospitalized multiple times. My mom was gone a lot. My dad had to work. A lot of responsibility fell on me, but we all grew up, and later in life, Dave, he became my best friend. Next to my husband, there wasn't anything David and I couldn't talk about. What I miss most are our great theological discussions about different saints and the theology of the church. And he was so knowledgeable about so many things. But one of the things that strikes me in his absence is his love of the church. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, he also felt inadequate. Oftentimes, he didn't feel like he was doing enough.
Yeah.
But his example, the life he lived, the example he showed to me, his other siblings, anyone that knew him, he really knew that God calls us to live our lives fully. And that is one thing that David did. He lived it fully. He loved without bounds.
Yeah, he did. It's amazing to me how many people he loved. He just loved people.
Yeah, and he gave people the credit that they were due. Mm-hmm. He never took anybody's credit away from them.
Yeah,
he was a humble man, and he was a devout Catholic. I was always learning from him. Up until the week he died, I was always learning from David. I miss that.
Yeah. I know you guys used to talk a lot because he would often say to me, I just got off the phone with talking to Rosie.
It's funny because for the past couple of years, between 4 and 4:30 every day, my husband and I would look at each other and say, that's Dave, because the phone would ring. And we knew it was Dave. Dave and I could talk for hours.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get that. He and I would talk for hours too. I don't know how he had time to talk to so many different people because I know he was busy doing things too. And you're right. He always would apologize to me. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not doing more. And I was so thankful for anything he did do. But you're so right. He always wanted to be doing more. And he was so self-deprecating. That's so true. I didn't know you ran away from home.
Well, I didn't go very far and I didn't go for very long, but I did take off out of the house in a heartbeat. And my father thought my mother had told me. My mother didn't know. My father didn't tell me. And I couldn't deal with the fact that I might lose my baby brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. David told me that you were like a second mother to him.
I don't know what it is about he and Andrew, but they both thought I was like a second mother to them. I'm like, really? I didn't see that, but that's okay. I guess that means they loved me.
How many years were there between you and David?
David and I were what?
He was born in 1966.
11 years.
That's a fairly significant. Yeah, that's fairly significant. I can see why he might think of you as a second mother.
When he was in Alabama having his heart surgery, I was home with the rest of the fam, and Andrew was a toddler, and I remember him crawling up the steps for the first time. And Andrew and Dave were thick as thieves. Oh, talk about two young men who loved each other and did things together
I know.
and got into trouble together.
Yeah, I know it was really, really hard on him when Andrew passed away. That was just so, so hard for him. So one small consolation I have with having lost David, because there's not much, I know he and Andrew are together again.
Yep. And my dad and his godfather, Joe Quinn. There are just so many people. And there's so many people that he touched throughout his life that went before him. And countless numbers of people. Yeah. So I'm sure the reception in heaven was quite a thrill.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you're right.
Hi, my name is Jamie Alcroft, and I just published my new book, The Tin Man Diaries. It's an amazing story of my sudden change of heart as I went through a heart and liver transplant. I can think of no better way to read The Tin Man Diaries than to cuddle up in your favorite Hearts Unite the Globe sweatshirt and your favorite hot beverage, of course, in your Hearts Unite the Globe mug, both of which are available at the Hug Podcast Network online store. Or visit heartsunitetheglobe.org.
Home Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective.
I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
Heart to Heart with Anna is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
In a second segment, we were talking about how David's heart defect affected his quality of life, and I'm really happy to see how it actually didn't affect his quality of life in a very negative way for most of the years of his life. And it actually seemed to really open up his world, and he made so many friends during his lifetime. So my final topic is related to what David was doing with the last days of his life. I know many of you knew of David's love for his dog, Douglas. We've already been talking about Douglas and his love for his family and friends. And I know it was really important to him to go to Florida and see you, Vinny. And I know it was really important for him to go up to Connecticut to be there with you, Roseanne, and both Roseanne's sister and Roseanne mom, and also to see his brother Phil. I know that was really important to him because he talked to me about how he was disappointed that he didn't have more energy, that by the time he made it up to Connecticut, he was only sorry that he just was so tired. He would take Douglas to the dog park and he would come back and he needed to take a nap from that. But I want us to talk about a special memory of David regarding his time with you, something that you want to share about those last days with David.
Dave would come up on a Saturday or a Sunday and he'd bring Douglas. Douglas was a big dog.
Douglas was a big dog.
He always worried about the marks in the hardwood floors. And I'm like, Dave, don't worry about it. We can buff those out. It's not a big deal. Oh, no, I'll take it. And I'm like, Dave, just stop. But one of the big things was he was quite the pizza aficionado.
Really?
Being originally from New York, I figured, well, yeah, we all like really good pizza. The first time he came up, it must have been, in December, early December. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, let's get pizza. And we had a great place where we ordered it from. Well, he loved this pizza place. And we had this pizza that we called the Dave Special. It's a basic cheese pizza, but you have onions and black olives and bacon. But this place sauteed the onions.
Ah.
Oh, over the top. Even after Dave passed, we ordered that pizza in his honor, and we did our best to gobble it down. And then this pizza place closed.
No!
My husband and I were mortified. It's like, Dave's Pizza. How are we going to get Dave's Pizza? I mean, it's like he had a patent on the pizza. And the nice thing about this place was it delivered.
Sure.
And we finally found another place, and he would have loved it because they didn't saute the onions, but they used red onions. And I'm thinking, oh, Dave would have loved this. You know, we had a wedding in the family, and we just had some good times to talk and watch sporting events and play with the dog outside and just be together.
Yeah. That wedding was really important to him. He talked to me so many times about the wedding. He was so happy that he got to be there for the wedding.
Yeah, and Sarah was up, so we have some great pictures of he and Sarah, and my daughter was thrilled that he could be there. I think his last days were filled with love, and they were filled with peace, but unfortunately, he was really struggling to breathe.
Yeah.
And that could be seen. I think the fact that he was with Douglas at the dog park, that was the way it had to go.
Yeah.
That was the right way for Dave.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with you. When I heard how he went, I thought that was God smiling on David, because he didn't want to be a burden. He talked to me about that multiple times. In fact, that was one of the things that made him reticent about moving in with you, Mom, was he didn't want to be a burden on you. He didn't want his situation to stress you. And yet he was so happy to be there near so many family members. It was a struggle for him because on the one hand, he really wanted to be close to family. And on the other hand, he didn't want you all to worry about him and see him decline. And then there was Douglas. And Douglas just is the one who got him out exercising every day and in a way kind of got him to stop thinking about himself, because it was all about training Douglas and helping Douglas to be healthy.
And Douglas is happy. He's now living with Phil and Phil's family. We get to see him occasionally, and he's doing very well.
Oh my gosh, when I was at the funeral and the kids brought Douglas in, you just saw that dog totally bonded with those kids. It took him no time, it doesn't sound like.
Yeah. I think Dave's very happy that things were able to turn out the way they did.
Yeah, I think so too. Vinny, do you want to talk about the last few days that you had with him when he was in Florida?
When he came down, I was ill, and 3 surgeries later, I'm fine now, but I wish I had more time with him.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I really can say about that. It's never a good time when this happens. I mean...
No, it isn't. You're right. I think we all wish we had more time with him.
Right. But I think my mom can probably give a better story because she had more time with him. After he got past the first 2 days of driving to here, I mean, he was wiped out. I can't believe he made it in 2 days.
I know. With Douglas in tow.
Yeah. I told him I'd get a hotel for him, just drive 6 hours. Drive 6 hours, 4 times? And I told him I would get him a hotel along the way. And he said, no, and he made it there in less than 2 days.
Yeah. He was eager to get there because he didn't like Douglas being cooped up.
Right.
You know,
well, he was one determined man, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure.
Mom, what do you have? I think you probably have a pretty good story or stories about Dave, but I just miss him.
I know. I think we all miss him.
One thing I was really happy about was that he had always stayed in touch with many of his high school friends from Chapag High School. After he was here, maybe a week or two, he started contacting some of them, who were still in the area. Not many are. But he did connect with them, too. And they found a microbrewery in the next town up in Woodbury. And a couple of times, a few of them met and renewed their friendship. They had been keeping in touch. He was very happy with that. As I said before, I didn't realize how ill he was because he put up a good front.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to mother him.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds silly, but, he was a grown man. So I tried to be very careful not to nag about, did you do this? And are you feeling this? And have you checked your temp? Because he was good about all that stuff on his own.
Yeah.
I think he was happy here for a few times. One thing he did tell one of his friends, it may have been you, Anna, I don't know who, and he told me afterwards, he said, well, my mom likes my dog, and my dog likes my mom. So,
yep, he did tell me that. It was very important to him that
yes.
Douglas liked you and that you liked Douglas. Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me walk Douglas at all because, well, I'm an old lady, but Douglas is a strong dog.
Mm-hmm.
He's been trained a few times, but I think he fights the training. But I think he's maybe mellowing out. Philip and Amy and the kids come to visit me, and sometimes they bring Douglas or Dingo. And I saw him last week, and I think he's getting fat.
No. They're not exercising him like David did.
Oh, yes, they are.
Oh.
Because they have a whole huge yard, which is electric fence.
Oh, okay.
He can run. No, I think he's just so content. Or maybe it's because I don't see him every day.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed that Philip and his family took Douglas because I didn't want him to just go back to someone who didn't know him.
Right.
David loved him. Yeah.
David told me Douglas saved his life.
Yeah.
The last 6 months, especially of his life, it was very easy for him to fall into a depression and for him to not be the happy-go-lucky guy that he had been before. And he didn't know what he would have done without Douglas.
No. It was always strange because he never looked ill when he was younger. It's only in the past few years that you could see things changing for him. So nobody ever believed he was in such bad shape, even when he was a kid. I remember when, after the stroke, he did get a handicap sticker, and he entered Austin Community College. So he parked his car in a handicap thing, and somebody really gave him a hard time because, of course, he didn't look like he had a heart defect. He didn't look like he had a stroke because he soldiered on.
Yeah.
But that was a gift to him, too, because I think he would have really struggled with that. I remember when he told me, I said, why are you growing a beard? This is not long after the stroke. And he said, because I can't really shave right. So it took him a while. And then he would go back to the beard. And I thought he was so handsome without it.
You and me both.
Yeah.
I liked him clean shaven too. But yeah, most of the time that I knew him, he had a little bit of stubble. He wasn't afraid of a little bit of stubble.
No. But the beard I did not like at all. But anyway, I just hope he's at peace and he's not hurting. And he and Andrew are playing their guitars together. And the good Lord's looking down on all of us and saying, he's being taken care of. He's home. He's home. He's home.
Thanks, Mom.
Anna?
Yes.
My mom brought up Dave reconnecting with friends. Dave has friends from grammar school and high school that he kept in touch with all these years. His friend Stefan
Oh, yeah. Stefan's the one that he went hiking with the last time up to Colorado.
The last trip a year ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Stefan took him to France, to Normandy. They were good pals. They were good friends. They were very supportive of each other. And his friend Tim from grammar school, he kept in touch with Tim. Tim came and saw him when he was here in Connecticut. And I'm just sorry that we couldn't let more people know and the circumstances couldn't have been better, because I'm pretty sure that if we could have, his funeral would have been huge.
Oh, yeah.
I'll bet dollars to donuts that Dave says, thank you, COVID, because he wouldn't have wanted the kind of accolades he would have gotten if we hadn't been in a time of COVID. He was very humble.
Mm-hmm. He was very humble.
I do wish that Stefan and Tim could have been there. When Dave made a friend, he made a friend for life. It's the way he was.
And that's a beautiful legacy to leave behind, to have so many people who cared about him. And he certainly did touch my life, and everybody that works on the podcast was touched by him because he was such a helpful guy. If any of us needed something, we could always reach out to David. He was amazing. Well, friends, that does conclude this episode of Heart to Heart with Anna. Thanks for listening today. I knew this was going to be a difficult and emotional show to record, but I felt we needed to do it before we ended season 15, because season 15 was the last season that David worked with me on any of the programs. I still can't believe he's gone. He's a very special friend, and I'm sure that thanks to the stories that you have heard today, that you too understand why we wanted to share David with the world one more time. Please take a moment to give those you love a phone call, or a little note, or a hug. Our time in this world is not guaranteed, but we're all blessed for whatever time we have with one another. As sad as it is to lose one we love, we're all richer for having one another in our lives. And I know I'm so much richer for having had David Franco in mine. Remember, my friends, you are not alone.
Thank you again for joining us this week. We hope you have been inspired and empowered to become an advocate for the congenital heart defect community. Heart to Heart with Anna, with your host Anna Jaworski, can be heard every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time.